The priest didn't know that a camera was watching him and did this. In a small, tight-knit community in the southern countryside, the arrival of the charismatic American priest, Father George, initially caused a stir. The townspeople were known for their strong religious beliefs and unwavering devotion to their local parish, and they were skeptical about the young 35-year-old priest taking over for their previous spiritual leader who had served the community for decades. However, Father George's dynamic preaching style, commitment to works of mercy, and impressive academic background, including studies in Rome, eventually won the hearts of the congregation. The early days of Father George's tenure were filled with uncertainty and trepidation. The townspeople had grown accustomed to their previous priest's traditional approach to worship and spiritual guidance. They were unsure if the young, energetic American with a different cultural background would be able to understand their needs and relate to their way of life. As Father George settled into his new role, he made it a priority to connect with the people on a personal level. He went out of his way to visit the sick, comfort the grieving, and offer guidance to those in need. He also encouraged his congregation to participate in charitable acts, organizing food drives for the less fortunate and clothing donations for the homeless. In addition to his good works, Father George quickly gained a reputation for his captivating and thought-provoking sermons. He had a unique ability to make the teachings of the Scripture relevant to the daily lives of his parishioners, urging them to practice kindness, forgiveness, and compassion in their interactions with others. His sermons, infused with personal anecdotes and a touch of humor, kept the congregation engaged and eager to learn more about their faith. Word spread about their new priest's refreshing approach to spirituality, and soon people from neighboring communities began attending his masses. The once dwindling congregation saw a surge in attendance, and the church's once empty pews began to fill up once more. Father George's presence breathed new life into the parish, reinvigorating the community's commitment to their faith. As the months went by, Father George continued to strengthen his bond with the community. He became a fixture at the local events, cheering on the sidelines at youth soccer games and attending community potlucks. He even took the time to learn about the area's history and cultural traditions, incorporating them into his sermons and celebrations. It was evident that Father George truly cared about his congregation and was dedicated to serving them in the best way possible. Despite his initial resistance, even the community's most ardent skeptics eventually came around to appreciate and respect Father George. They saw that his passion for his work, his unwavering faith, and his deep commitment to the welfare of the community were qualities that made him an exemplary spiritual leader. Through his perseverance and dedication, Father George managed to unite the community under a shared sense of purpose and spiritual growth. His humble, down-to-earth demeanor, combined with his unwavering faith and commitment to the teachings of the Church, inspired the townspeople to live their lives with renewed purpose and zeal. In time, the once apprehensive community came to embrace Father George as their spiritual guide and confidant. His energy, passion, and ability to connect with people from all walks of life transformed the small parish into a thriving, close-knit community of faithful believers. Among the townspeople, Laura, a kind-hearted widow, was one of Father George's most devoted followers. Known for her unwavering faith and selflessness, she dedicated much of her time to working for the church, organizing charitable events, and supporting the parish's missions. Her dedication and generosity made her a beloved figure in the community. Laura had been a pillar of the community for many years, and her faith had only grown stronger since the passing of her husband. In the face of personal tragedy, she found solace and purpose in her devotion to the church and her fellow parishioners. The arrival of Father George only served to fuel her passion for service, as she was inspired by his energy and enthusiasm for helping others. As a vital member of the congregation, Laura was always eager to lend a helping hand. She was often seen at the church cleaning and decorating the altar, arranging flowers, and preparing for upcoming events. Her dedication to the church's mission was evident in the countless hours she spent organizing fundraisers, coordinating volunteers, and offering support to those in need. Laura's selflessness extended beyond the walls of the church. She was known to visit the sick and elderly in the community, bringing them meals, offering companionship, and sharing words of comfort and encouragement. Her acts of kindness were not limited to her fellow parishioners. She frequently reached out to help others, regardless of their background or beliefs. The community admired Laura not only for her unwavering faith, but also for her genuine kindness and humility. She was a living example of the values Father George preached, and her actions inspired others to follow her lead. Many in the community were motivated to become more active in the church and to engage in acts of service thanks to Laura's influence. One fateful morning, after attending the 7 a.m. Mass, Laura decided to stay behind at the church and pray. As she knelt in silent devotion, she was inspired to live stream the church's beautifully renovated altar on social media, wanting to share the sight with her friends and fellow parishioners. With the first light of dawn filtering through the stained glass windows, the church took on an ethereal glow, and Laura felt compelled to share this moment of serenity with others. As Laura continued to pray and live stream, her heart suddenly began to race. She felt a sharp pain in her chest, and her breaths became short and labored. Realizing something was terribly wrong, she tried to call out for help, but her voice was barely a whisper. The pain intensified, and Laura knew she was experiencing a heart attack. She clutched her chest and fell to the ground, her phone slipping from her grasp, but continuing to record the scene. Hearing the commotion, Father George rushed to her side to provide assistance. As he entered the sanctuary, his heart dropped at the sight of Laura lying motionless on the floor. He quickly assessed the situation, realizing Laura's dire condition, and began administering cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, in an attempt to save her life. With each chest compression and rescued breath, Father George prayed fervently for divine intervention to guide his efforts. While Father George was attending to Laura, the sacristan and a group of ladies from the parish entered the church, having completed their work in the gardens. They saw Father George running from where Laura lay, and without taking the time to fully understand the situation, they immediately assumed the worst, that the priest had caused Laura harm. In a state of panic and confusion, the sacristan rang the church bells, alerting the town to the perceived emergency. The sound of the bells resonated through the town, drawing the attention of the townspeople. Concerned for their fellow parishioners and curious about the commotion, they rushed to the church where they encountered the distraught group of women and sacristan, who relayed their misguided interpretations of the events. The news spread like wildfire, and it wasn't long before the local authorities were notified and made their way to the church to investigate. Soon the townspeople and local authorities gathered at the church demanding answers. Father George, visibly distressed, tried to explain that he had only been trying to save Laura's life, but the crowd was in no mood to listen. The air was thick with tension and suspicion, and it seemed as though the beloved priest's reputation would be forever tarnished. A wave of hysteria swept through the crowd as fear and anger fueled baseless accusations against Father George. However, unbeknownst to the crowd, Laura's dropped phone had captured the entire incident on video. As the recording continued, it documented Father George's attempts to resuscitate Laura and his frantic search for the holy oil to administer the last rites. The live stream, still broadcasting on social media, was being watched by many, including several townspeople who had not made it to the church. The evidence was there, but in their frenzy, the crowd had overlooked the truth. As the situation escalated, one of the younger parishioners who had been watching the live stream from home arrived at the church, holding up his phone to show the crowd the video. The authorities, recognizing the potential importance of the footage, took the phone and reviewed the recording. As they watched, they realized the truth. Father George had done everything in his power to save Laura, not harm her. The video showed Father George's heroic efforts to revive Laura, administering CPR and calling for help. It was evident that he had been doing everything he could to save her life, not to cause her any harm. The crowd fell silent as the truth began to sink in. They had jumped to conclusions, falsely accusing Father George of a heinous crime without any evidence. With the truth revealed, the townspeople were overcome with guilt and remorse. They had allowed their fear and suspicion to cloud their judgment, resulting in the defamation of an innocent man. Ashamed of their actions, they approached Father George one by one, offering heartfelt apologies and begging for his forgiveness. The priest, despite the ordeal he had just endured, graciously accepted their apologies and forgave them. In the days that followed, the community sought to make amends for their actions. They rallied around Father George, offering support and assistance in any way they could. They also continued to pray for Laura, who remained in the hospital fighting for her life. The incident had left a deep scar on the town, but it also served as a powerful lesson in the dangers of jumping to conclusions and the importance of seeking the truth before casting judgment. The events surrounding Laura's heart attack and the false accusations against Father George ultimately led to a period of introspection and growth for the community. They had been forced to confront the darker aspects of human nature and the consequences of their actions. In the process, they had discovered the power of forgiveness and the value of trusting in one another. As time went on, the community became even more closely knit, with the townspeople realizing the importance of unity and trust in the face of adversity. They took the lessons they had learned from the ordeal and applied them to their everyday lives, working to support one another and foster an environment of compassion and understanding. This newfound sense of solidarity extended beyond the church and permeated every aspect of life in the town. Father George, for his part, continued to work in the parish, his dedication to the spiritual well-being of his congregation unwavering. He used the events surrounding Laura's heart attack as a teaching opportunity, reminding his parishioners of the importance of not jumping to conclusions and the power of forgiveness. His sermons often touched on themes of love, understanding, and the need for empathy in an increasingly divisive world. Laura eventually made a full recovery and returned home to the loving embrace of her community. She was grateful for the support and prayers she had received during her time in the hospital and felt a renewed sense of purpose in her service to the church. Laura's experience and the community's response served as a testament to the power of faith and the strength of their collective bond. In the end, the ordeal that had threatened to tear the community apart instead brought them closer together. The townspeople emerged from the experience with a deeper appreciation for the importance of trust, understanding, and empathy in their relationships with one another. They were more committed than ever to supporting their fellow parishioners and working together to create a brighter future for their town. As the years went by, the story of Laura's heart attack and the events that followed became a part of the town's collective memory, a powerful reminder of the dangers of making assumptions and the importance of seeking the truth. Through the grace and forgiveness and the wisdom gained from their experiences, the townspeople continued to build a strong, loving community that served as an example of unity and faith in action.